raise your glass up high. Turn it up, it's time. Tall boy on the line. Everything will last. Raise your...
Welcome back to episode 294 of the Tallboy Radio podcast. And have we got an excellent episode for you tonight? We are once more joined by retired Lieutenant Commander Vernon Geberth, and I'm confident I have pronounced his surname right on this occasion. Am I right?
Well, that's pretty good. It's Geberth, but you got it right. I mean, as long as you don't make me a Gerbert or a Gebert or something else, okay?
We're getting there. We're getting there slowly but surely. Before we get to tonight's episode, though, I do just want to say a quick thank you as well. So we've been sent some beef jerky by a gentleman by the name of Gavin Webb, who makes his own beef jerky. You can find it at www.jerkypaleo.uk. Now, I am not being paid to promote this. I tried it earlier. It is good. It is fantastic. And it is also very good for you as well. It's low in salt. It's low in sugars. And it is super, super tasty and super, super chewy. I would recommend the piri piri, but that's just me. Why don't you give it a go and let me know what you think? But Gavin, thank you very much, and we look forward to having you on the podcast in a couple of weeks' time. So that's my little bit of commercialism out the way. Vernon, how have you been keeping?
Well, I see you on Facebook. You see me on Facebook. We had a big celebration last weekend, okay, with my beautiful wife of 60 years, and I managed to surprise her, which is very difficult because I can't pull anything off. She reads me like a book. But we had a very nice celebration, and and went back to normal now.
That's it. Yeah, it passes too quickly. In fact, it's my wife's birthday tomorrow. So, Kim, if you watch this back, happy birthday. Just in case I forget tomorrow. I promise I won't.
You'll never forget. No. We don't forget those. Those are anniversaries. Those are indelibly etched in our brain.
Amen. We're not allowed to forget them. So once more, we're going to be delving into your book, which is called The Godfather of Homicide. I have my copy here, and you'll notice there are some green tabs sticking out the side if you're watching this on the video version. So yeah, so we've done it before. We've delved into this book because there is a wealth of case in there, and I think you can learn something different from each. So we talked about which cases, and we had a little bit of back and forward as to which ones we thought would work and which ones we thought wouldn't work, as is always the case. And the one we've decided to start off with, well, before we get to it, did you want to give us a little bit of background to this first case that we're going to be talking about, Vernon?
Well, this segment of the book is my entrance into homicide. Don't forget, I was detached for a number of years in major cases downtown, etc. The beauty of being an investigative commander and being a detective in New York is you meet a lot of people in different boroughs. So by the time I came back to the Bronx as a detective sergeant in the 7th Homicide, I was well versed with who the personalities were, what the dynamics were, what the area was like, because I had worked in the Bronx as a detective. I was there as a detective sergeant in the Tactical Patrol Force. And now for the last few years, I've been doing major cases with organized crime, narcotics, Harlem, South, all over the place. So walking into the 7th Homicide, I'm not coming in like a newbie. I'm coming in like a trained homicide investigator, an investigator. I don't want to say the word homicide because I got to learn the process. A lot of people who become bosses go to different units and they think they can automatically be in charge because they're the boss. Well, I'm not about to come into a new procedure without learning the dynamics, okay, the personalities, and what the operation entails. So I spent a lot of time doing homework. And in my short time there, because that was a busy zone, that was the busiest homicide zone in the city, 225 homicides a year in a 6.5 square mile area. It was a killing field. And, people have seen documentaries of the South Bronx or the burned out buildings, and we talked about that in a little podcast. But here I am, newly assigned, and I'm in the assignment for about a little over a month. And the worst thing that could happen to a new supervisor is an allegation of corruption against one of my people. Now, when this detective sergeant from the intelligence division came up to the Bronx Homicide and asked to speak to the commanding officer, the entire unit was raised up. Like, who's this guy from downtown? He's wearing a suit, what's going on? And he has to speak to the commanding officer. So everybody's suspicious. Now, I say hello to him because he knows me. I work with him in the Organized Crime Control Bureau. So short time later, I find out that he tells the lieutenant that one of the people under my command, a detective, okay, had gone downtown in Manhattan from the Bronx with an associate, okay, and attempted to brace an undercover officer to identify him, who he was. And that's, to me, that's a crime, obviously. But this stage, the benefit of the doubt is maybe he was on an investigation. So the detective sergeant from intelligence tells the lieutenant, can you find out what he was doing in Manhattan? Because it's very suspicious and it's very unnerving and unsettling. The undercover was burned. So the lieutenant asked the detective to come in. Okay. Now, right away, all the rest of the detectives, they're racing, what's going on? And he asks him, what were you doing in Manhattan? So the detective comes up with a really bullshit story that a friend of his had his car damaged and he went down with him so he could get money from the guy who hit the car. He was doing him a favor because I used to work with him. And they were at this place in Lower Manhattan that's an organized crime bar. Well, what did you do? No, I just sat in the car. I didn't do nothing. It was the wrong guy, and came back. So the lieutenant says to him, well, you better not go there again because there's a big operation and the intelligence division's down there. He walks back into the office and he tells me, that's all bullshit. Well, next thing I know, the sergeant from the intelligence division tells the lieutenant, by the way, I saw Geberth out there. I work with him. Is this guy assigned to Sergeant Geberth's team? Yes. Well, then you better call him in because he knows about these operations. So now, 20 minutes later, I get called in. Now the whole place is what's going on. So the lieutenant tells me the story. And I said to him, Lieutenant, did he give you the name of who he was? Oh, yeah, it was Jerry Vasili. I said, you know who Jerry Vasili is? Yeah, I never heard of him. I says, he's a defrocked detective. He was thrown off the job for a felony. He's an organized crime guy. I says, you better listen. I said, I don't know what happened in the last discussion you had, but you're in the middle of a major case investigation. You better find out exactly what this detective said, did, or what he did, because I'm telling you, this isn't going to end here in the office. This is an investigation. So now he calls the detective back in with me. Now, the two of us are talking. Now, this is not a custodial interrogation. This is simply, what were you doing in Manhattan? But the detective doesn't know that I know who this guy is, Jerry Vasili. So I said to him, what were you doing with him? He said, oh, we worked together in youth crime, and he asked me to do him a favor. I said, yeah. I said, you do know that he was arrested for a felony? Oh, yeah, but this had nothing to do with that. I said, okay, just want to make sure. Did you ever get out of the car, or did you ever identify yourself as a detective? Oh, no, I sat in the car. I said, okay. He leaves. Well, I know better. This is going to blow up big. So he goes back, and next thing you know, the detective is saying, why were you questioning him? I said, I wasn't questioning him. The lieutenant was questioning him. We merely asked what he was doing in Manhattan because he's from the Bronx. I said, that's a serious allegation if he did anything. No one's saying he did. Well, I saw it coming, beans. Next thing I know, there's a grand jury. He's subpoenaed to the grand jury, and me and the lieutenant are subpoenaed to the grand jury. And so the grand jurors and the court detectives, the prosecutors asking us what they said. Well, we told him what he told us. He was down there helping a friend. That's it. That's all I know. Of course, I also know that the guy he was with is no good, but I'm not saying nothing. Let the grand jury investigate it. Well, the intelligence division had already did their homework. They knew who he was with. They had the whole story. He did actually stop this undercover, pulled his shield with the numbers covered, and identified himself as a detective and asked him to show his identification. So the undercover was smart enough to use his undercover identification. He never said he was a cop. But the backup team that's watching this took his plate number down. That's how they knew it was the detective. Well, the grand jury comes back with an indictment. When he was indicted, this detective came back and he badmouthed me all over the command. Geberth's a rat. He's no effing good. He lied. Initially, he had some support because they're all detectives. But then as the case unfolded and they saw that he actually tried to burn an undercover, which could have got him killed, he became persona non grata. But that's a hell of a way to start business in a new command.
Well, yeah, I mean that is the very definition of a baptism of fire, isn't it? Just to
Big time. Don't forget, I'm brand new there. I'm negotiating to find out who's who, and I'm working with these people. I'm working with 5 or 6 different teams. And you know from our past podcast that I was a student of homicide. I was every day off. I'd be in the library. I'd be learning. I'd be pulling cases. I'd be talking to them. I'd be going to scenes. I didn't need to have that over my head like I'm some sort of dangerous person.
no, no.
That went away real quick.
No, well, I can imagine, but not when you're finding your feet and you want to establish yourself and make it an impression so that people know who you are, and that's important. That's important in your role. We know from the dealings with you, you're a no nonsense guy. You're straight down the line, and you do everything for truth and for justice, and everything is done in the name of God. So something like that must have felt like a real kick in the pants.
Well, it didn't take long for me to distinguish myself after that. I went to a scene of a homicide in this place called the Stadium Motor Lodge. For the people in England, it was a no-tell motel, okay? It's not a nice place. What happened, 2 black suspects were apprehended running from the motel by anti-crime. In their pocket was a room key for room 130. They went to room 130. In the bathtub was a dead guy, executed back of the head. So we get called. Now, I've been there since 7:30 in the morning, and we're putting together a pretty good case. We were able to identify the deceased, okay, by taking prints and sending them downtown. He turns out to be a numbers man in Harlem, taking gambling.
Yeah.
He was kidnapped for ransom. As soon as the ransom was paid, rather than let him go, they killed him so he wouldn't be a witness. I mean, no morals, no conscience, no nothing. So the poor bastard's in the tub, dead with a shot in the head. Forensically, we were able to put him to the 2 guys that were in custody. So we're linking him. And we come up with the guy who actually collected the ransom in Harlem. And we're in the middle of pursuing that when at 3:30, because the tour ends at 4, at 3:30, my lieutenant calls me. Vernon, we're sending another team to relieve you. You have to come back to the command. I said, Lieutenant, do you realize where we are in this investigation? And do you realize if you send another team, when it comes to going to court, 2 teams are going to court instead of 1, you're going to have nobody to work. I said, well, that's the chief's orders, no overtime. I said, well, I think that's wrong. He said, then why don't you call the chief? So I did. I called up the chief cold. Don't bring them. Hey, chief, this is Detective Sergeant Geberth. What's this bullshit about no overtime in the middle of an investigation? The chief says, who is this? I said, Detective Sergeant Geberth. Oh, yeah, the new guy. He said, I never said there was no overtime. I said, there's no unnecessary overtime. Conduct your investigation. Get back to me with the results. Because he was a no-nonsense guy. He was tough. The trouble was, a lot of these sergeants, including and the lieutenant, they would try to bullshit him. And they would give him information like they knew what they were talking about. Oh, this chief, he was too much. He knew, he wanted facts and nothing else. From that point forward, me and my team got overtime on every investigation. Now, the other sergeants are complaining. How come Geberth gets overtime? Well, he talked to the chief. Nobody wants to talk to him. And I became the go-to guy. And we solved that case, and it was very good. But right after that, there was a guy who was wanted for 6 rapes and sodomies of little girls. The guy was a parolee, a real savage animal at gunpoint. He was considered armed and dangerous. Everybody in the city knew who he was. And we had informants out there calling. So we're back in the command one evening, and all of a sudden the phone rings, and my detective, George Scroop, he's giving the signal, we got to move, right? He's at 173rd and Clay Avenue in the Bronx. It's a real inner city, bad location. We come bailing out of the office, running down, jumping to the cars, racing with sirens until we get in the area, turn the sirens off, and he's not to be found. So we cruise the area. All of a sudden, I spot him. I said, the guy with the hoodie, he's trying to flag down a cab. So I get out with my partner, another detective. The other guys come from the other side. We come up on both sides of him with guns drawn. Don't move, motherfucker. He was so shook up, he pissed his pants. He denied being James Brooks was his name. He denied being Brooks. He brought him in, took his fingerprints. We got him. Well, after that, people began making fun of Geberth and his team. They called us the G-Men because we would run out. They made it like they had cartoons. You know how cops are funny. It's like police humor. They had cartoons with me with a helmet and G-Team running out of the office. But every time there was a major case, the chief would call me and handle this. So I was making a good reputation. And it was kind of a little friction with some of the other sergeants, but they began to fall in line when they realized if you do your job, you're going to get overtime and you're going to be recognized.
Well, that's what I was. This is what I was wondering. So, like you see, you'd earned yourself a reputation. You don't mess around, and we know that. And like you say, you found a chief there who doesn't mess around. I imagine that was a match made in heaven. But when you're getting the overtime to use on your man, and the other chaps aren't, was there a little bit of blowback? Was there envy? Was there jealousy? Or was there, people thinking we need to pull up our socks and get to the
There
level?
was a jealousy until they realized if you do your job, there will be overtime. Don't forget, the lieutenant didn't want to ask the chief. Right? Well, why rock the boat? But when they saw that what was happening, and don't forget, I was supervising other teams as well, because you don't only supervise your own team, because when a homicide comes in, whatever team's available, I'm the supervisor. Now, by this time, I have my act down pretty good because I've been taking notes. I got a protocol that I follow, and I'm making them do what I want them to do. All right, which is going to require extra time, especially with forensics. I mean, at one point, it got so bad, some of the crime scene people wouldn't respond if I was at the scene because they didn't want to work. They said, that fucking Geberth, he wants us to do this and do that. I says, you got to get evidence. You can't just take a confession. I want evidence. I want physical evidence.
So the other thing I wanted to ask you, you referenced it in your book. So when you reference you standing up and running out, obviously they were making fun and doing the cartoons. But the G-Man team, can you tell me what that means? As someone from the UK, I'm unaware of what that might mean.
Well, the G stood for Geberth.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, that's the G-Man. It was like a joke on me. And at the time, they had these magazines and they had people in hockey uniforms and stuff, and they took it and they posted it up because every time something happened, we would run. The other guys would walk. We ran. Just got to get there. That's my personality. I mean, listen, I'm operational. I just believe in getting there fast, because if you don't get there fast, you can't control the scene. If you can't control the scene, you can't obtain evidence, and you're going to lose witnesses. I had it down pretty bad, especially in the inner city where people are not going to be witnesses, and a lot of people are bad guys. If you get there soon enough, you might recognize some of your former clients. That's why one of my procedures were, as soon as I get there, I would take a picture of the crowd. All right, sure as shit, somebody we knew was in there.
Is that right?
Which is good. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was one of my protocols. Oh, I wasn't anywhere near you. Oh, yeah. What's your picture doing here? All right. What do you know? That was one trick. The other trick, I had a couple people in the team. You'd never make them as cops. There's one guy, Ralph. He was a scary individual. He didn't look anything like a pockmarked face, afro hair, and he spoke Spanish, right? What would happen, we have a street case, and he would mingle in the crowd, and he would listen to the people talking in Spanish, Oh, I can't believe he killed him. He came back. So he give us a signal to grab this guy. All of a sudden, we'd look around, we'd run into the crowd, and we'd grab the guy who was talking. And the crowd would say, how do the cops know that? Because telepathy. Oh, it was really interesting.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, I guess that's it, isn't it? You know what I mean? What we see on TV is different to it. But I tell you what, there's a few tricks of the trade that we just learned there that sound straight out of something that we might see on like 70s or 80s cop shows. That's fantastic. So when you tell these cases, then, just out of interest, when you're telling these stories, and you do tell them fantastically, again, because you keep to the facts, but you've got a very keen memory and a keen eye for detail. Do you get transported back in time when you're telling these stories?
Oh, in some cases, yes. This other case we talked about that we're going to cover, the would-be attempted assassination of 2 police officers. That was a wild case, Beans, because It was a Sunday night. I'll never forget it. It was a Sunday night, and for some reason, it was quiet. I don't know why. It was quiet. About 10:30, an informant came in to meet one of my detectives, Richie Rivera. And Richie figured he was there to tell us about some homicide that he knew. He was a real smart, street-level guy. He wasn't a bad guy, but he got information, and he was a good informant. So he goes and they go into the interview room, and him and Richie Rivera are in the interview room. 10 minutes later, Richie comes out and says, "Hey, boss, you better get in here. This is heavy." So I come in and I introduce myself and said, "What's going on?" "Well, he got $15,000 to do a hit. And part of the hit, he wants his wife killed. But he just got out of jail yesterday on a heavy-duty narcotics case. He wants the cop killed so he can't testify." I'm going, whoa. Now that's heavy. All right, so right away I go into my investigative mode. I says, all right, interview him, get the facts. And you know what the case is? No, I don't know what the case is. I said, listen, we're going to tape this interview, okay, because I want to make sure I have the facts straight. And continue to talk to the detective. I'm going to make a couple of phone calls. I had been in the Organized Crime Control Bureau Narcotics Division. So I made a call to a couple of people I know. I says, "Are you aware of a case in Queens involving this guy, Felix, a Colombian drug deal?" "Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's in jail. Big case." I said, "Well, give me the phone number of the case officer." I call up the case officer. Ironically, he turns out to be a friend of mine, George. I says, "George, it's Vernon. Listen, we're interviewing somebody who's talking about doing a hit on you. I don't want you telling anybody. Don't notify your command. Get your wife and your family out of the house, because I don't know if this hit went out to anybody else except the one who's talking to us. Because the potential is maybe he told this guy he wants a hit, but maybe he told somebody else. So I'm trying to protect the cop if there's another person who was hired." I said, "Do you trust me, George?" "Vern, I trust you with my life." I said, "Well, you got it, because I'm going to call you as soon as I have more information. Get out of the house tonight. I'll call you first thing tomorrow morning." So the next thing, I go back. Now I know the case. So I said to him, "This guy who wants to hit," I says, "can you call him up and see if you can make a meet? Because we're going to have to get more facts about this case." So he makes a phone call. And the guy is very reluctant to talk on the phone because, don't forget, he already got caught once. But he gives enough information to corroborate that he wants a hit done. So now I got the tape. Thank God I had a decent captain working on that, Captain John Planska. He's investigatively oriented. I run to him. I says, "Listen, Captain, we got something going down. It's a hit on a cop." I said, "But we're going to have to move fast. He wants everything done like yesterday." I go back into the room to continue the conversation with him. "Oh, yes. And I want to report police corruption." "Oh, police corruption." Oh, I go, Jesus Christ, there goes the whole case. As soon as you mention corruption, it brings out the idiots from internal affairs that they see corruption every place, right? I says, you know what's going to happen. They're going to go to pursue the corruption and not the pursuit of the attempted hit. Have it on tape. I got the tape of the corruption. Tell the captain we're going to have to call the chief. Now, it's Chief Dre, the same chief's a tough nut, and he's IAD oriented just like most of the chiefs. The problem is his inspector, Dimwit, okay, he's from IAD. He orders the captain to secure the tape and to be in the office tomorrow morning. Oh, that's okay. That's fine. That's administrative. Operationally, I put my TARU, Technical Assistant Resource Units, on notice. I want them to be prepared tomorrow for taping and surveillance, because we want to corroborate this. So that's where we're at. It's now Monday morning. I report to my command, the captain's already at borough headquarters being interrogated by the deputy inspector. I get called, report forthwith. That means immediately. So I get there, and Captain, I basically tell the same story. He said, "Well, this allegation of corruption is very serious," says the inspector. I says, "You know what's more serious?" I said, "The allegation about attempted murder of police officers." At about the same time, a captain from IAD and a sergeant from IAD arrived. "Where's the informant? We want to speak to him." I said, "That ain't fucking happening." The inspector goes, "Do you know who you're talking to, Sergeant?" I said, "I know exactly who I'm talking to. I haven't completed the criminal investigation. Corruption can wait." Then it was, wow, now we got a wild free-for-all going. Everybody's yelling, screaming. So I yelled out at everybody. I said, hey, everybody shut up. I'm telling you right now, if anything happens to this cop, I'll be the first person to be a whistleblower, and I'll testify against all of you. So Chief goes, calm down, everybody. Let's work this out. At that time, the chief and the inspector had a report downtown for something else. That left the IAD captain, my captain, the IAD sergeant, and me. That was the four of us, got even sides. Okay. They insisted that they wanted to participate. Well, I'll tell you what. First, we're going to get information corroborating that there's going to be this hit. So I run out with Detective Rivera, and we have our guy make a phone call to the subject who wants to do the hit to set up a meeting for later in the afternoon so we can get the details. I come back with the tape. Okay, we're going to surveil the informant in a wired car with technical services, and we're going to surveil him to this location where he's going to meet the hitman in person. Well, we're going to participate in the surveillance. I said, that's not a good idea. We are ordering you that we are going to participate in the surveillance. I said, okay, you're a captain, I'm a sergeant, you order me. Right? We give them radios. As we're going over the Throgs Neck Bridge into Queens County, I get on my other radio and tell all my units, switch the frequency. I knocked them out of the surveillance. You know why? They had a Crown Vic. It looks, a Crown Victoria, it's a car.
I know it, yeah.
Every cop's got a Crown Vic. They're wearing suits and ties, right? I may as well have a goddamn fire truck following us. So they're out. Well, the meeting didn't go down till 4:30 in the afternoon. And when we got the tape, we had an oh shit moment. Not only does he want to kill the cop, but he wants to torture the cop for the name of the undercover so he can kill the undercover cop. We're talking about two cops. So now we got to go back to the Bronx command. The chief's back in his office, the inspector and the captain from IAD, they're basically apoplectic, right? Why did you cut the inspector? What did you do? I said, shut up and listen to the tape, goddammit. All right? When they heard the tape, chief notified downtown, notify internal affairs to back off, stand down. The case is being transferred to Queens. So that night, the meat had gone down. I have the informant contact the hitman to get further corroboration. We want to do this on Thursday. We need time to get everybody in place. I got to get the Queens officers in place. I got to meet with the Queens detectives, the chief of the Queens detective area, Chief Stoll, the lieutenant commander in Queens at the 116th, okay, Tom Ahern. So, 16th Homicide Zone. So I got a lot to do. I got to bring all these pieces together. Well, everything's set for Thursday. Wednesday night at 9:15, the informant calls us. He wants to do it tomorrow, and he wants me to spend the night with him. I said, son of a bitch. That's why it was called Operation Reverse. Every time we thought we were going one way, the bad guy reversed us. I says, hey, listen. I says, you're supposed to be a hitman. You're supposed to tell this son of a bitch that the cop won't be there till tomorrow afternoon. You can't go out there tomorrow morning. So he held him off. Now we're ready for the next day. Now I got to notify everybody to be ready Wednesday morning instead of Thursday morning. But Taru's with us, but they got a wide car, a different car this time, so he's not in the same car. And we have everybody on the same page. I got the Queens detective area. They're on. I got aviation with a helicopter that's going to be above following. Everything's set up. They're going to go to the 113th precinct, which is where the Queens narcotics office is. And my friend George, who I've also called him back and let him know what's going on. He's going to exit like he's going home from work, walk out by himself, and get into his car. What nobody knows is that the lieutenant commander from the 16th Homicide Zone's in the back seat with a shotgun, just in case. And he drives away from the precinct. As he drives away, the bad guy, they're following, and they're about to encounter him when all of a sudden 20 units come from all over, including the helicopter. It looked like something in the movie, for Christ's sake. It worked perfectly. Beans, I'm telling you, it was the most stressful 72 hours I ever had in my life. But the best part of the story is when we came back with the tape that the two cops were going to get killed, my next day was my scheduled day off. So I said to the inspector, "Can I stick with the case? I can't afford to pay you overtime." Can you imagine this silly son of a bitch was worried about paying overtime? There's a threat about two cops. That's what I'm telling you. These IAD people are fucked up. They just are fucked up in the head. I said, "I don't want the overtime. I'll take a chart change." And I did. I worked, on my own.
Oh, fair play. So, yeah, just a quick one then on internal affairs. You know, is is there a feeling then that these guys, well, is there never a feeling that these guys are just doing their job, or are they just getting in the way of police work? Which one?
I don't know. Some of them are good. Some of them shouldn't be there. Some of them are afraid to be in the street, and some just hate cops. It was interesting because the chief out there at the conclusion, when this case broke, this was the story all over the news. I mean, all the major newspapers, the TV stations, we were interviewed and everything. And what happened was I kind of felt bad because I felt that the key people weren't recognized because the chief's name was in there, my name, the other zone. It's like, I want to get the people in there. So I notified the police officer's journal so I could get everybody's name in there. So I made sure that everybody knew that who was involved in this case. All right. Like I said, make sure you recognize Taru, Larry Mullins, Bruce Kennedy, Dennis Butler, Eddie Torres. Okay. Make sure each of the names got in there. Of course, Richie Rivera, who's my detective. What happened is the chief of Queens sent a communication down to the chief of detectives. He wrote, "In my opinion, Sergeant Geberth and Detective Rivera performed a highly credible and unusual police accomplishment. The manner in which the initial information was elicited and pursued, including their expertise in corroborating and documenting, reflect admirably upon them and the department." It was the sergeant's tenacity in the face of everything else that pulled it off, which was great. So I get another medal. But more importantly, I saved two cops because I said, for the record, I said, we would have been going to two police funerals if I didn't have a detective like Richie Rivera who had the sources he had to stop this.
I mean, that's got to be a good feeling, hasn't it? Yeah, especially when one of those was a personal friend of yours. To be able to save somebody's life and knowingly save someone's life, and like I say, your colleague there who's got the contacts. How common, how common is it that sources like that bring up information like that? I can't imagine that hits on police officers are particularly commonplace. I certainly hope they're not.
No, but there's different kinds of assassinations of police. The Black Liberation Army and the Black Panthers, they were shooting cops because they wanted to make a statement, and nobody was going to report them because it's all racial crap. This guy was a good informant who got information. He would stumble upon things because he was a street kid. And people are always, it's kind of like the mafia. The mafia is 24/7. If it's a crime, it doesn't matter what the crime is. If there's a way to make a quick buck and it's illegal, they're going to do it. So it's the same thing, but it's a matter of developing and handling confidential sources properly. Okay, you don't treat them with disrespect. You thank them when they do something good. And if you can help them out, you help them out.
So when you're dealing with these guys, there's got to be an element of doubt that maybe what they're telling you isn't true, and they're telling you maybe for their own benefit, or they're being coerced into saying it. Is that commonplace where these guys will give you misinformation for their own benefit?
Oh yeah. We discussed that case on one of the podcasts where the informant was working both sides, and he sent me to Georgia, and then I had to go to California, and he was a bad guy. These things happen, but the whole idea, and that's my training. When information comes in, I only don't take the information; I corroborate the information with other sources. Okay, and taping and surveillance and backing this stuff up makes the information good.
Yeah, I can imagine. And how hard is it then organizing something like that? Because I imagine when you're working and you're investigating a case, we know that you've got a very particular way of approaching it. You've written a book about you've written the book on how to investigate homicide. So that side is very, very different to dealing with people, pulling the people in from Queens, getting the helicopter pilot all sorted, pulling that whole thing together and planning it. How difficult is it to do that, and how different is it to your everyday day job that you do?
Oh, extremely difficult because we're not only dealing with a different borough or county, you use the word county, we use the word borough, not only dealing with a different county, but with different personalities. I had to sell this to the chief of Queens detectives and to the lieutenant commander in the 16th homicide zone. I had to sell it and show him what we have. And he's a trained investigator, just like I am. And they're going to cooperate. And also who sat in was the district attorney from Queens County. So you have to sell it. Now, once you sell the product that is and it's real and you cooperate it, and that's why I had to make additional tapes because we had to lock this guy into a certain time frame. Once the chief of the borough commander, once the chief says fall in line, they all fall in line. So it wasn't like Vernon directed anything. I was just, I was working through the system.
Yeah, fair play. And like you say, you got a medal for it as well. How many medals did you get in your career, if you don't mind my asking?
About 65. I was in a few shootouts and a couple of hairy situations and some scary stuff.
Yeah.
But you know something? After it was all over, it's a nice story.
Well, hey, man, yeah, and this is the thing about your book. Your book is full.
I mean, when it was happening, it was scary as hell.
Oh, no, no. Yeah, no doubt.
Listen, you could lose your life. That chase through the streets of Little Italy. You remember that one?
Yeah.
Okay, with the $100,000 in diamonds. I didn't know what was going to happen with that. and you know what was sad about it is that here I was already passed by for sergeant on a bullshit allegation that was unsubstantiated, but they held it over my head because that captain wanted a piece of me. And why did he want a piece of me? Because I basically told him he was a jerk. I shouldn't have told him he was a jerk. But hey, I prevailed. But you know, it made me a better boss. I'll tell you that, and it made me a better cop because I could see through bullshit, and I didn't hurt anybody on the job. If they were doing the job and they had to be defended, they would defend it. If they did something wrong, well then fine, I'll take action.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that for 1 second. Yeah. So when you faced adversity, and like you say, you've been in shootouts, do you have time to sit back and reflect and be grateful to still be alive, or is it literally on to the next one?
No. You do a lot of praying, a lot of thanking God, and there but the grace of God go, not me, but the police funerals I've been to. I've been to too many police funerals in my career. Saddest thing in the world. See grown men with tears coming down their eyes because in reality, that could be you. But if we thought like that, beans, we wouldn't do the job. That's the problem. We have people in police work that don't belong in police work. So what do? They go to internal affairs. They go to someplace else. But to be in the street and to establish your street creds, you got to be tough, and you got to be willing to start. That's the ultimate sacrifice. I hope none of us have to make it, but we're prepared. But you mentioned, I think one of the podcasts you asked me about having your gun out. I always have my gun out. All right. Because I'm not going to go for my holster. I lose 3 seconds. No, the gun's out and I'm ready. It's by the side of my hand. And when we go into a place, guns are out.
Yeah. See, we've had a number of different New York City cops on. We've actually had someone on who's worked internal affairs. I won't pass his name on to you, but yeah, we've had a number of different cops on. And one of the things a couple of the guys that we've had on never had to shoot a bullet in anger. And, and that's, I guess it's, they work different departments. When you're in the homicide, I guess, you're going to be faced with a little bit more adversity than some of the other guys. But New York City back then was a pretty hostile environment, certainly the area you worked in as well. So it can't, it must have been fairly commonplace.
Well, I'll give you an example of how common it is. We go to a homicide where there's a shooting, right? And so we do a canvass and we interview the neighbors. Do you hear shots? You hear shots all the time. Okay. There's shootings going on all the time. You can hear the shots. The difference is that some people run away from it. We run for it. Yeah. Okay. Because we're trying to catch them. I'm just thinking of something that you've just raised an issue. I was a social club where there had been a homicide, maybe about a month earlier. And there were shootings. And of course, We marked the bullet holes in the wall and everything. So a month later, there's another shooting. So now we know those are new holes because the other ones have circles on them because we were there already. It was a very violent environment, okay, but we were good at it, and our people were good. We had good sources of information, and we learned as we went along.
Well, it certainly gave you a lot of content for your book, didn't it? So, do we want to move on to the next case then, which is we were going to talk about, and you've talked about this before when you've been on the podcast, staged crime scenes.
Oh, yes. And that stage crimes. I was one of the first people to start writing about stage crime scenes in my protocols because they're very common, especially in domestic violence homicides. But the case you're alluding to is very because it shows you the mentality of these people. This guy was an alcoholic, and he ended up beating his wife to death. All right. So after he comes out of his stupor, all right, he sees his wife laying on the floor. So he calls up 911 to report that his wife was beaten in the street and he needs an ambulance. Okay, so let's talk about ambulance response time in the South Bronx on a Friday night. 45 minutes to an hour before you get an ambulance, okay? Nobody's coming. So he gets bored waiting. So he decides, this doesn't look good. So he tries to clean up the scene and he strips his wife nude, takes all the clothes because they're soaking wet with blood, and he puts them in a garbage can in the neighbor's yard. All right. Now he calls back 911 to report. I just came home from the bar and someone broke into my house and raped and beat my wife. So that's the second call. So when I get the call, I'm responding, and the area I'm responding to is kind of like a kind of a crime area, organized crime area. So I'm expecting something different. I walk into the crime scene and I see this poor thing completely nude, her face is battered, and this guy with the story. So I'm listening to the story, and I'm saying, every time I ask a question, he has to add something to it. I says, let me explain something to you. I says, you called 911, right? Yes, I wanted to report that my wife was raped. I says, yeah, but you called 911 the first time to say that your wife was beaten in the street. He forgot about it. So when we played the tape, he gave it up. He gave up the bloody clothes. The forensics didn't work for the story he was telling. I'm big on forensics, and the bloodstained spatters did not go with the story. But what's interesting about crime scenes that are staged, I did a whole analysis of that. And it was kind of interesting because staging may be premeditated, okay, or not, fabricated and misdirected. Some common things are the husband leaves the house for a short period of time, returns to find his wife dead. That's kind of his story. Or an arson the day before there's a business audit. Or a commercial burglary right after the company was delivered new computers. Or a car is stolen and torched the day before it's supposed to be repossessed. Or any change in the routine of what people ordinarily do. So the person who premeditates the staging is one leg up on us because they've had time to plan the event. All right. They're going to think about what they're going to do. They're going to establish an alibi. They do the research. And so those premeditated stagings are much more difficult to interpret because the ordinary response of a homicide cop is to go to the scene, look at the presentation, and draw conclusions from the presentation based on what we've seen before. So if the presentation looks like a suicide, you're going to be leaning towards a suicide. So in the case of the person who is spontaneous, and that's what this was, even though he's a drunk, he's still spontaneous, right? It's a sudden and immediate decision to alter the scene after the fact. That's difficult because you can't change the scene. In their mind, they're going to change the scene, but they can't change. The crime was just committed, and the only person who could have done it is you. So now you got to make it to be somebody else, all right? Because the stories develop on the spur of the moment and not well thought out, there'll be gaps or holes in the story. The physical evidence doesn't support the explanation. And their perception of what the crime scene should be is probably based on a TV presentation, which doesn't work in real life. So I did a whole analysis of staged crime scenes. And the one thing about the 911 call, so important. One of my colleagues that I brought into my, I have 65 books in forensics, different aspects. One of my colleagues is an expert on 9/11 calls. Tracy Harpster, Deputy Chief Tracy Harpster, and his partner, an FBI PhD named Susan Adams, put together a book on 911 calls. And basically the title is the caller the killer? Because the 911 call is the purest form of information because there's nobody there to tell them what to do. There's no lawyers, right? There's no threat. They're making the report. So analysis of 911 calls usually results in determining that the person who made the call is the killer, and there's going to be errors. Wow. So I'm always thinking like of what I can do, some additional sources.
So sometimes then when that 911 call's been put through, you've got the information and it's presented to you there. Are there occasions when you're driving here thinking, this doesn't ring true? The guy who's phoned up is most likely the guy who's perpetrated the crime. Or is it a case of you have to wait and get there to see, well, he's told us this, and I'm arriving on the scene and I'm seeing A, B, and C, which is absolutely contradictory to everything this guy has told us on this call.
Oh yeah. And that's it. Like, suppose someone calls and I just came home and I found my wife killed, and I don't know if the perpetrator's in the house. Okay. So that's why I didn't do anything. I didn't go in. I didn't want to touch her. I didn't want to see. Bullshit. If you saw your wife on the floor, you'd run over to see if you could help her. Okay. So these are the kind of things that these folks think they're smart with, but you let them talk. Let them talk, because the more they say, the better it is. No kidding. And then what happened? Wow. Were you afraid? Just grab the information and pull it out of them. So now there's so many different aspects to this. And the forensics is very important, because when people stage things, the problem with the staging is if you're dealing with a police officer who stages the scene, because they know what the scene should look like. So I have some really interesting cases involving the police officer, and I think we mentioned one on one of the podcasts, that Drew Peterson character.
Yes.
Yeah, that reported his wife missing, and he did such a jackass job. Sorry, she'll never be found, but it showed what kind of personality was. He had killed his second wife. All right. So, all these factors are important.
So have you ever come across a crime scene then, like, maybe that has been done by a police force, maybe it hasn't been done, where they've done a pretty bang up job, where actually they've done a really good job of misdirection? Or are there clues right from the offset and, the hint?
Well, probably the most significant case of misdirection was the case that I consulted on out in Illinois, Lieutenant Joseph Glinowitz, who staged his own homicide because he was about to be exposed for corruption and theft of services. Now, ironically, he planned this so well that it mobilized the entire area of police officers and responding units. It was the medical examiner himself who first determined that this looks self-inflicted. I'm not too sure about this. And when he said that, everybody got mad at him. No, it's a cop. Cop was killed. Well, at the time he did this, there were 5 separate incidents of police officers being assassinated in Texas and Chicago and someplace else. So psychologically, everybody was on board that this was an assassination. Because his last radio call is, I'm following them into the woods. And then there's a shot fired, and then a second shot. Well, the one shot he fired into his bulletproof vest, well, that knocked the shit out of you, to tell you the truth. But it doesn't kill you. The second shot was underneath. So it looked like a homicide. It was very well staged. and it was finally all straightened out. And it cost thousands of dollars and everything else. And then it turns out that this guy was a bad guy. His wife was involved with him, stealing money and all kinds of crap. What a black eye for law enforcement.
Yeah. I mean, that's not commonplace, though. Like you say, you mentioned a couple of cops there, like this guy, and then there was the fella in the first tale that you told who, who'd been dishonorably discharged after committing a felony. That's not commonplace, is it, amongst the police force? I think our perception is, that they're up there and they're doing a bang up, they're doing a fantastic job. There can only be a few bad apples, surely.
Well, it's not common. Thank God, it's not common. But the problem is you're dealing with people who know how the system works. They know what the response protocol is going to be. They know what it should look like. So if they're putting it together, we're going to miss it initially. Yeah. Let's talk about that gut feeling. When you get a gut feeling that something's wrong, guess what? Yeah. There's something wrong. It's the subconscious trying to get through during the daytime. Hey, Vernon, listen, shut up. I'm busy. I'm awake.
How much do you rely then? How much do you rely on that gut feeling?
Oh, I rely on gut feelings all the time. That and the fact that I doubt about how things could be coincidental. I don't like coincidence. Okay. But what's happening, and it's a dynamic behind this. But thousands of scenes in my life. So these things play like a kaleidoscope. All right. So as I walk in, I'm seeing different things, which is good because there's only so many ways to kill. There's only so many stories to tell. If you hang around long enough, you're going to hear the repeat, the three-peat, and the four-peat. All right, because people being people. But no, it's a dynamic. You have to be vested in it and serious about your occupation, your profession. And some people aren't, and that's a detriment to the operation. If you don't want to do this job, get the fuck out. All right, make room for somebody else who's enthusiastic and ambitious. Because I used to love to have new people come in. I would take them to the scene and I would show them, listen, there's certain morphologic changes that take place with the body. You got to be aware of this. Like if you see this, this means this, okay? And the presence of this means something else. And, pointing things out. And they would learn. It'd be like a workshop. So they will really say, oh, yeah, Sergeant Geberth told me, Lieutenant Geberth told me this. So that's how you learn.
Yeah. One thing I want to ask you as well. So, there's a question I'd noted down to the guy who was, sodomized and obviously captured him. You got him on the street there in his hoodie and he pissed himself when you had captured him. When you're dealing with gritty cases like that, is there ever a danger of anger taking over? Because you can't not feel angry when people have done.
Well, let me tell you something. That guy deserved a good old-fashioned ass kicking. Let's face it, for what he did. But the truth of the matter is, he was armed and dangerous. Okay, but the way we took him down was so strategic and so effective that he was neutralized. But there's other cases, that's how you get hurt. But we talked about that in other podcasts. When you don't follow a protocol, like I have a fugitive squad. The reason I had a fugitive squad is so people don't get hurt. They know the suspect. They know the suspect's girlfriend. They know his wife. They know where he hangs out. They know what he does. Very important. You got to know who you're looking for. All right. But anyway.
Yeah. Curious. So just one last case then that we had noted down. Then the one that I'd picked out that I was just, I know some of the ones I pick out are not, maybe the most intricate cases, but they grab me as unusual and a little bit different from some of the stuff in the book. So the one I wanted to hear about was the vicious hit and run.
Oh yeah, that was a sad case. Oh my God. The kid, I remember the kid's name. It was William Carlo. He was 17 years of age. And he was out with his friends. It was a Friday night. He's out with his friends. He's got a radio. They're walking across the street and this car comes racing by and made some sort of remark to them. And they didn't think anything about it. All of a sudden, the car turns around and comes directly at him like 50 miles an hour, hits the kid, knocks him over the car into the street. There were eyewitnesses that saw this. It was reported as a hit and run. Okay. After I interviewed the witness, I said, this is not a hit and run. This is an intentional murder. This is a murder. And then I took over the case from the night watch, took it over to my command. And the saddest part was telling the mother that her son was dead. Oh my God. Her husband was a Yonkers firefighter. The kid, he wanted to be like his daddy when he grew up. He was a good student. I mean, you know, I hate to say it, but the good die young. The bad they keep going. I don't know what they're waiting for. Anyway, we didn't have much information. We didn't have any plate number. We had a description of the car. I went after this two ways. It was my opinion that there were three people in the car. It was my opinion that three people in that car did not decide to commit homicide. The maniac behind the wheel decided to do that, which means we have two scared people. So I started by doing a broadcast, a news broadcast, both in the Bronx and in Westchester County, because the car was going towards Westchester County, with an appeal for anybody to come forward. Then we had the witness that saw that happen. Witnesses, they didn't get the plate number, but I decided to try this technique called hypnosis. And I had a detective sergeant that was a hypnotist. And under hypnosis, people's memories can be enhanced, and they can recall details that in the normal atmosphere they wouldn't recall. But under hypnosis, they can recall things. Well, this witness didn't see the plate number, but saw some sort of white material around the bumper of the car. And that's what he gave us. I didn't know much about it. Now, in the meantime, the father of one of the passengers sees the newspaper report, and his son is acting very strange. His son tells his dad, "Dad, I was in that car. I was with so-and-so." The father says, "Listen, we have to call the police. Get a hold of your friend, okay? Not the guy who's driving the car." He calls me up. I said to him, "We'll be right there." It was White Plains, New York. Went up and saw the father. He says, "My son was in the car here." I says, "I understand that. He didn't do it. The maniac behind the wheel did it, but your son's going to have to testify. You realize that." Meanwhile, the district attorney, "Oh, we're going to lock everybody up." I says, "Listen, stupid. Those are your real witnesses, okay? You don't have a case without them. You ain't locking anybody up." So we get the two kids, we bring them down. They identify the guy. David Garcia was the name of the perp. He was a real asshole. You know, so some people are assholes. He was an asshole. Yeah. Out of the clear blue sky, he decided to run this kid over. But he was a smart asshole. He already had the car repaired, okay, had the windshield replaced. Well, we ended up at the body shop. I got the windshield with the blood on it, got the car, brought it all in. He was arrested and charged and indicted. And I as a representative of the police department, I went to the family funeral parlor. The mother was so thrilled that we helped, which won't bring her son back, but it made me feel good that we gave her some closure.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? And we hear this all the time. And I watch a lot of documentaries, true crime documentaries about homicide, etc. And there is that, it's great to bring that feeling of closure. But the real tragedy is that it happened in the first place, and you can never undo the harm that's been done. And we normally close these episodes up round about the hour mark, but Vernon, I hope you got a little bit more time for us, because there's one case that we saved there towards the end, and it's the murder of Officer Reedy, that we wanted to talk about. Have you got time to discuss that one?
Absolutely, Beans.
Yeah.
That was such a sad case, and there's more to that case. This is after the Larry Davis episode where I'm about to go out of the police department. I got the chief on my back. I can read the tea leaves. They're coming, but they're not going to get this guy because I'm too smart for them. It was January 23rd, 1987. I had worked a day shift. I was home. I had just come home, and I walked in the door, and the phone rang. It's one of my detectives. "Hey, boss, we have a cop killed in the 5-2 precinct." I said, "I'll be right there." All of a sudden, he heard a loud voice in the background. "Who's called? Don't call Geberth. I'm handling this case." It's Chief Rotundo, the asshole. "I'm going to handle this case. Tell him to stay home." Unheard of. What borough commander would not want their lieutenant commander in charge of homicide to investigate that case? Yeah. So I said, "Well, I can feel this coming." So, but he's the chief. I stay home. All right. Next morning, he had a call from the zone captain. "Vernon, come in. The chief fucked everything up." I had to start from scratch. I had to put it back. Saturday morning, I put together a task force, and we're looking for, we believed there was a robbery going wrong. We're looking for robbery patterns. We're looking for narcotics with informants, and we're putting everything out in the street, offering rewards. And by Saturday night, we had the name of a possible perp, but he was in the wind. Okay, he was gone. So at least we know who we're looking for now. By Sunday, we have surveillance at 3 different locations: his girlfriend, his mother, and his some nest that he stayed in. Right? We pick him up Sunday afternoon. We got him. All right. Now, my first grade detective, Louis Hernandez, will get the confession and confront him. And we have him under arrest for a murder of a police officer. Now, the protocol for us is that we have to notify the Bronx District Attorney's Office to have a district attorney come to the precinct to authorize the arrest, which I consider to be bullshit. But this is a game that lawyers play. All right, so now it's a major snowstorm and things are bad. The DA that shows up is about 5'2", wearing a silly snowsuit with ear flaps, Coke bottle glasses, and with a Napoleon complex. And he comes in walking out, I want this, I want that, I want this. And I'm looking like, who the hell are you? You know? So I want to talk to the prisoner. Of course you can talk to the prisoner. And I want his handcuffs off, and I want any cops in the room. I said, oh, that doesn't work. Detective Hernandez made the arrest. I don't want him in the room, and I'm ordering you to keep out of, and I'm going to talk to him. Okay. 5 minutes later, I hear like an hysterical woman screaming, ah! The guy jumped out the second floor window of the precinct. Why? Because he has no handcuffs on, and stupid ordered us. We bail out. We run out, and I see footprints in the snow heading towards the Webster Avenue. Now, to get to Webster Avenue, there's a railroad cut. You can't cross the railroad. You have to go up to Fremont Avenue or go south. I send one team north. I go south. All right. Now, it's a major snowstorm, so we're not driving too fast. But I figure he's going to try to get to Webster Avenue. I see a bus coming down Webster Avenue very slowly because of the storm. I throw the light on top of the roof. I pull in front of the bus, jump out with my gun going. And the detective, we got on the bus. He's not there. Meanwhile, 2 anti-crime cops see what's going on. They pull up, boss, what's going on? I says, the guy that killed the cop escaped. There's nothing on the air. I don't want anything on the air. I don't want him to know we have an escaped prisoner. So I give him a description. Meanwhile, I go back to the command to start doing damage control, so to speak. All right?
Yeah.
I'm back at the command about 10 minutes. All of a sudden, they hear a radio transmission from the 4-8 anti-crime cops. They got him. He's on a rooftop. They chased him into a building. He almost fell off the roof because of the ice and the snow. They rescued him. Now, Baines, you and I both know, if that fucker went off the roof, the news media would have swore we threw him off the roof.
Amen. Yeah.
Which would have been a good disposition, but we can't do that. Anyway, they came back with the prisoner. Now the damage is done. It's on the air. Escaped prisoner in Bronx homicide. Fatso Rotundo comes in from home, and his deputy, Inspector McNasty. What a nasty bastard he was. Oh. Anyway, I grabbed the 2 cops. I says, by the way, I'm going to write you up for assignment to detective bureau. You did a good job. Now the fun begins. Well, there's going to have to be charges. A prisoner escaped. I says, no, the prisoner didn't escape. The district attorney lost the prisoner. Now my detective, Louis Hernandez, is going, hey, boss, I didn't lose him. They're talking about giving him charges. And McNasty, who's a real, what a prick. I said, and he's not getting charges, Inspector. He didn't lose the prisoner. Oh, then maybe we'll give the commanding officer charges too. I said, that's a good idea. Chief, let me talk to you. I'm going for the Hail Mary pass. Now, remember my background. Operation Uncover, the Mafia. During that operation, a lot of police officials' names came up, okay, that didn't get charged. I kept notes, all right? I know that McNasty was locked up for being on the pad. He was arrested and charged. But the 2 cops that testified against him got their pension. His attorney convinced the jurors that they only testified for their pension. He beat the charges. He was acquitted. He came back twice as nasty. You would think that someone who went through that might develop religion and be a better person. No, he came back twice as nasty. I'm telling the chief says, you're a fucking wise guy, damn it. I said, yeah, but I kept notes. And if he gets charged, I'm going public. I'm going to the newspapers. I'm telling everybody. No charges. Don't fuck with my men. All right. But it's coming. I'm on borrowed time. So another month I'm going to be out of there. And there were no charges. He was convicted and everything else, but I had one more trick up my sleeve. Before I left, I authorized the first DNA case in New York State, the second one in the United States, the third one in the country. You know the story because we talked about it.
I do.
The best part of the story is I'm walking out the door and the bill comes in. No, murder cops don't get mad. We get even. All right. And that's the story. There's a million stories in this naked city. That's one of them.
Yeah, amen. So yeah, you mentioned it there, and it's how it's titled in the book. Don't fuck with my man. There's a real camaraderie. Yeah, there's a camaraderie there, isn't there? There's really, really important.
Certainly is. These are good people, and they risk their lives for you and do a great job. It's your job to protect them. I always looked at my job as to deflect the missiles that come in from the Puzzle Palace headquarters. Right? Deflect the missiles so my people could do the job. And I did, but of course, I was willing to go down with the ship. That's how strong I was. I didn't have to. I was exiting stage right.
I don't doubt it though. You know what I mean? I think this is maybe the 4th or 5th episode that we've had your guest on, and the one that you guested on, and we talked about the army gentleman who had allegedly taken his own life. It's the most popular episode of the podcast that we've recorded. It just goes on getting listens and listens and listens, which tells you something about it, that people out there resonate with things like that, which are clearly important when you want to put the truth out there. And that's what we've done in every single one of the episodes that we've recorded with you. We've shared some interesting tales, but don't let.
Well, it's good because you have the book, so you can follow along and you can ask me questions, which is good because I can't remember everything.
I don't believe that for one second. I believe you can remember it. But I hope that people out there go and pick up the book as well, and I hope that they remember that when we're telling these stories, because they're not just stories, they're not just tales, they're real people's lives that have been affected by them and go on by being affected. Whether you're a witness, whether you're a victim, whether you're a perpetrator, everybody's lives change that day. And whether you're a police officer as well, you never know. Yeah, you don't know the toll that's taken on you, and it takes a special kind of person like yourself to be able to deal with it and to be able to still be talking about it now. So Vernon, I have to thank you for it. I have to thank you for sharing these things with us, and I look forward to the next episode that we record.
I thank you for the opportunity, and I say I'm working for God. I really am. I believe in this, okay, and cloak myself in the armor of God. That's why I survived all those medals. But more importantly, I don't forget my victims. I remember early on, I think you asked me, what was the biggest case you ever had? That's why I can't tell you, because every case is unique for some reason. The victimology, the circumstance, the intrigue, the publicity, So that's too many cases. But I tried to do as best I could.
No. And you do. It's absolutely fantastic. And I guess when I ask that question, it comes from a point of naivety on my point, because I don't deal with it. My job is a lot less serious than the one that you did. And when I ask that question, what I fail to take into consideration is, almost the value of human life. That in every case you dealt with, there was a human life at the center of that, and that's really important to take away when you're listening to these things. Because we can, the one thing we know when we have you guys on, the you cops have got a very dark sense of humor, and you need that, don't you, to be able to get through what you've done.
Yeah, it's a survival mechanism.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. So,
and remember this, right? We had this.
We were
they're all over the United States. And they're in England too. I've had Scotland Yard people in my class. So
fabulous. So Vernon, thank you very much for joining us again. We will no doubt be recording another episode with you sometime soon. But did you want to leave our listeners with one final message?
Well, my message is remember that we work for God, and listen, God bless the police officers of the United States, Europe, and every place else, because we need all the help we can get.
Amen. And thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much if you've listened to this episode. And we'll be back next week when no doubt we'll be talking about something entirely different all over again. Thank you.